The PS5 Pro is real, here's everything we know about it. Guys, every PS5 is in stock for the best PS Plus month ever. And we're getting a big graphics update with the next PS5 expansion. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. I am on day 562 of being sick. Energy-wise, I feel fine. I'm just like draining. It's the worst, so you'll just have to put up with my weird voice for one more video. Hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers. The first thing I want to talk about today is the next PS5 to PC port has seemingly leaked. So the last one we got was Returnal. Unfortunately, Sony decided not to market it. It was already a game that's available on PS Plus Extra, and it wasn't the biggest game in the world when it came out in the first place, so the PC port didn't perform so well, but in terms of how it runs and plays, one of the best PC ports of all time. Like, seriously, so impressed with that. And then after that, we're getting The Last of Us in just a couple weeks on March 23rd. I'm really excited to see how that runs, especially over on the Steam Deck, because then it's just going to be the PlayStation Vita version of The Last of Us that I've always wanted. And now through a job listing, we know that the next game coming to PC is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart.
Happy 4th birthday to today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is an RPG with PC quality graphics and awesome intense PvE battles. You can play it on any mobile device out there, and there are over 700 champions that you can use to take on awesome bosses. Your raid journey can begin just like mine did 1 year ago today with the Elven champion Kale. I was getting bored playing the same old mobile games, and then came Kale. It's amazing how much stuff we've gone through together. I like Kale because he used to be a thief, but he was taught the power of friendship and allies by Arbiter. He's got a ton of AoE attacks, so he's good in pretty much any scenario, and he was really cool against the boss Dragon. He's also easily the best starter champion and the one that you should definitely take all the way to level 60. And thankfully, it's time to celebrate Raid's 4th anniversary. There's dedicated offers, free gifts, promo codes, events, and a brand new fusion event where you can get your hands on an anniversary themed legendary champion. They've also got a really cool recap video that shows you your stats in Raid. Oh, and for Amazon Prime members who just got Gembo, keep an eye out for some powerful Savage gear. You can grab that from March 2nd until March 30th. Use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get these insane bonuses. We're talking epic champion Kellen the Shrike and other useful things like energy refills, magic potions, XP brews, and more.
And since it's Raid's birthday, the gifts keep coming. All new and existing players can get a bunch of free birthday gifts. Once you're in-game, after clicking on the links, just enter promo code 4YearsRaid to get your hands on 4 legendary skill tomes plus other useful stuff.
I'll see you on the battlefield. Now let's get back into the video.
So the way this has been figured out is that Nix's, the company that Sony picked up after I think they did the Horizon Zero Dawn port over to PC, they basically put up a job listing where they were like, hey, we're hiring someone who has experience in this specific engine that makes UIs for games, and the only game that Sony makes that uses that UI is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. There's another game that uses it from Housemarque, but I'm pretty sure that game is not coming over to PC because it's so old. So yeah, it basically only leaves Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Now, I'm actually really curious to see how this port will run over on the PC, because just like with stuff like Returnal, over on the PS5, you had instant loading and warping with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. So when you would load into like the different levels that were in different time periods or different universes, it would be instant, like the world would wrap around you. And the trailers made it seem like you were going to be able to do that whenever you wanted, but it was really in predefined points. But still, that effect was basically thanks to the PS5's SSD, so knowing that the PC, while yes, you can get faster SSDs than the PS5, the PC doesn't really interface with them in the same way because they got to support so many different PCs going all the way down to HDDs. So yeah, I feel like that could be an interesting challenge for Nix's to kind of like hurdle over for porting Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart over to PC. Again, just like with The Last of Us, I'm really curious to see how this runs over on the Steam Deck. I don't know if you guys had PSPs when you were kids like I did, but there was always these like big budget ports of the biggest games on the PS2. So you had Daxter, which took place, I'm pretty sure, in the entire map from Jak 2. You had Resistance Retribution, you had Killzone Liberation, you had 2 God of War games that were on par with their console counterparts, and then Ratchet & Clank had Size Matters. And I rented this game while my brother and my family were out of town at my brother's baseball tournament. I rented it from Blockbuster, and I played so much of that game. It was really difficult. I played pretty much every other Ratchet & Clank before I got to this game, but it was extremely extremely difficult. The last boss was crazy. Ready at Dawn, I'm pretty sure, is the developer who handled that game, and I'm pretty sure after that they did Secret Agent Clank. They're the people who did the Order 1886, and then unfortunately were bought by Oculus, and they'll never do anything with PlayStation again. But I absolutely love that game, so if I can bring back my handheld dreams of playing Ratchet & Clank on a handheld, I will be so happy. But if it doesn't work on the Steam Deck, I could just emulate Size Matters and every other PS2 Ratchet & Clank. So I might actually do that, since all I've been doing when I'm not making videos lately is building Lego sets that are in my backlog and just playing old video games, because oh my god, it's been rough, guys. It's been rough over here. Next up, let's talk about Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores. Now this is the new expansion that's coming out for Horizon. It's going to take place around Hollywood. They showed it off at the Game Awards and it looked pretty cool. The big sort of like non-controversy with this game that I see Xbox fanboys talking about all the time is that it's not coming to PS4 and then it's just coming to PS5. They're like, Sony's already abandoning the PS4, and to that I say good. It's time to move on from the PS4, but one of the reasons Guerrilla gave for moving on from the PS4 to do this expansion was that they're actually going to take advantage of the PS5 with it, and it'll actually have some features that the original release of Horizon Forbidden West does not. First off, this is going to run at a hard lock 60 frames per second. I know Horizon had a few issues when it came out with frame rate and glitches and loading and stuff, but all of those have been ironed out, it seems, and this is going to be locked at a hard 60 FPS. It's being designed with 60 FPS in mind. They don't even have to worry about creating a 30 FPS mode for the PS4. Another cool thing that's coming along with this expansion is instant loading. It's pretty quick already in Horizon Forbidden West, but it's going to be absolutely instant thanks to the SSD and the CPU power of the PlayStation 5. So you're going to be able to jump around this new map whenever you want, wherever you want, and it's going to be totally instant, which sounds awesome. That's like my favorite feature of the PS5, the fast loading, the instant respawns after death. I was just talking about it in Returnal, that section. It's cool to see this feature that I first experienced with Hotline Miami back in the day, which is like a top-down pixel game, make its way over to like crazy 3D games with like some of the best graphics you've ever seen. Like Horizon, for example. That game looks incredible. They also say that because they don't have to worry about the PlayStation 4, this version of the game is going to be extremely detailed, like even more detailed than Horizon Forbidden West was, which I can't even comprehend that. It's going to be really cool to see LA kind of in a post-apocalyptic mode, because I drive on the 405 a lot. I like going to the movie theater in Porter Ranch because it's the AMC where they filmed that Nicole Kidman ad you see before every AMC movie. It's a super nice theater. So I drive up the 405 and I'm already seeing a building that I pass, like a really cool circular building in this like little screenshot from the article that's on my screen here. I'm excited to experience that, and I'm glad it's going to be even more detailed on the PlayStation 5 than it was on the PS4. It also looks like some of the new enemies, like the bigger boss fight style enemies that they're going to add to the game, are also going to be a lot more detailed and have a lot more going on screen than they would on the PS4. Obviously that makes sense because everything was beefed up in the PS5. And finally, Aloy is going to get better lighting. There's going to be special lighting on her at all times that was not achievable when the game was cross-generation. So this is pretty cool. I like that despite the fact that this is an expansion for Horizon Forbidden West, it's being treated as a semi-standalone PS5 experience, right? Like this is finally a game that's going to fully take advantage of the PS5, and hopefully it's like a window into what we'll see when the next Horizon game comes out. I really hope that it doesn't take as long as the last one did, because obviously that would mean we wouldn't see Horizon Forbidden West 2 or Horizon 3 till the next generation. I just want to get back to the PS3 days when Naughty Dog was able to put out Uncharted, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, and The Last of Us all in one generation. That's ultimately something that I think hurt Horizon in the long run, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And if you haven't played Horizon Forbidden West and you don't have PS Plus Extra, this is basically like the best month ever for you, because honestly, we've been ripping on Sony a little bit the past couple months for their PS Plus offerings, but what they're adding to PS Plus Extra this month officially, in my opinion at least, makes this the greatest PS Plus month we have seen, at least in 2023, but maybe in 2022 as well. Like this is a really good one. So Ghostwire Tokyo is coming up on its 1-year anniversary, which means it's switching back over to the Xbox side of the fence, but Sony is doing exactly what they did with Deathloop, and they're putting the game on PS Plus Extra as soon as it joins Game Pass. So whether you're on PS5 or you're on Xbox Series X, if you haven't played this game before, you're going to be able to play it technically for free if you have a PS Plus Extra or Game Pass subscription. And the cooler thing is, just like with Deathloop, they're adding in a big patch alongside this that has new content. So the biggest thing that's coming along with this update is the Spider's Thread mode, mode, which is a brand new mode for the game. It's a roguelite mode, and normally I really wouldn't care, but Bethesda has made some really damn good roguelite modes in the past. Prey, for example, Arcane made Prey, the reboot of Prey. Then they did Moon Crash, which is like made by a satellite studio, and it's a full-on roguelite RPG that's built with Prey's engine, and it takes place on the moon. It's absolutely incredible. It's like a standalone game. They dropped it during E3. Seeing how good that was, even though Tango's a different studio, we've seen that Bethesda studios all kind of talk to each other, so I'm assuming this roguelite mode is going to be pretty good, and I'm excited to dig into it. This update's also adding new areas to the map, and they're improving the combat, they're adding new skills, and they're making it more dynamic. It seems like a really good patch that's addressing issues people had with this game on day one. It sucks we had to wait a whole year to get it. Obviously, Xbox wants a big news story to go along with this game coming over to Xbox so they can make some money on it, get some people to subscribe to Game Pass. I really like this game. I think it's a really cool, spooky game. It's not scary at all. Like some of the monster designs, I guess, are a little creepy, but they definitely leaned more on the action side of the fence, which if you know the like history of Shinji Mikami, he's been trying to get away from actual horror ever since the first Resident Evil came out, basically. Like he tried going back to it with the Evil Within. I don't think he even directed the Evil Within 2, which is a lot better. So to see him do what he wants to do, make a spooky action game, that's pretty cool. I think this game is severely underrated, and the fact that it's adding more content, that's going to make it even better. Another game that you're getting on the PS Plus Extra Collection this month is the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. Look, if you just watched The Last of Us, you played The Last of Us Part 1, you want to see what Naughty Dog's best series is, in my opinion, you should check out Uncharted The Legacy of Thieves Collection. You get Uncharted 4, which like, yeah, it's a little weird to play that game not playing Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, but you can just play the Nathan Drake collection because that's backwards compatible on the PlayStation 5, work your way up, and then you get Uncharted 4, which I think, like, honestly, out of all Naughty Dog's games, easily my favorite. And then you also get The Lost Legacy, which is kind of like a prototype for The Last of Us Part 2. It introduced the mini open world. You know, like when you're playing as Ellie in Seattle, you have that open world section where you're on a horse. They have a very similar thing in The Lost Legacy that takes place in Africa, and you have a Jeep, and it's actually awesome. Like you have a hand-drawn map of the area that updates as you do the little objectives there. There's side objectives. You get to play as Chloe, who I had a huge crush on in Uncharted 2. I love the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection, so if you haven't checked this out yet, you should definitely download it on the Extra Collection. Immortals Fenyx Rising is like Ubisoft's take on Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's not as good, but it gets pretty damn close, and not being as good as Zelda but getting close means you're still better than most games. It has a lot of similarities with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and admittedly the story is like a little kiddier than Assassin's Creed. Obviously, if you see the like art style, you'll totally know what I mean. But I had a ton of fun with this game back when it came out. I also just replayed it on my Steam Deck, so I would highly recommend checking out Immortals Fenyx Rising if you want a quick and dirty little action RPG that you can blow through in a couple weeks. Speaking of underrated Bethesda games, Rage 2 is getting added to the service. Like the combat in this game is completely unmatched. I think what kind of held it back for me is the driving portion. Like the fact that it's open world is whatever. The story is also whatever in it, but the way that the combat all works and a lot of the level design, like once you actually get to the levels on the big open world map, yeah, I say that the story is whatever, but I remember it like years later, so maybe it's better than I'm giving it credit for. If you've never played this game, I definitely think it's worth checking out. But yeah, you take this awesome PS Plus Extra month and then pair it up with getting Battlefield 2042 right at the beginning of its new season where people are really positive on it. This might be the greatest PS Plus month of all time. Extra's doing a lot of legwork. I really think they should start adding PSVR 2 games though. That would be awesome. And finally, the last news story of the day is that the PS5 Pro is real. Tom Henderson, the most trustworthy source for leaks on the internet, is reporting over on Insider Gaming right after basically he had reported that he's heard more about the PS6 than the PS5 Pro, and he'd honestly bet that they weren't making a PS5 Pro. He's reporting that that basically opened the floodgates. He's heard more about the PS5 Pro and it's real. The trustworthy insider he spoke to said this is just the beginning of new PlayStation hardware this generation, alluding to the PS5 Slim that has the detachable disc drive. He's of course talking about the PS5 Pro, but I also hope they have a handheld in the works because, you know, you would think we would hear about them working on a handheld, but they kept this under wraps pretty good. And it's allegedly coming out next year in 2024, which means they got pretty damn close to the release year without this leaking, which in 2023 is absolutely crazy and kind of commendable. As for the specs, the article says details are limited. However, a recently published patent by PlayStation architect Mark Cerny suggests that Sony Interactive Entertainment is looking to accelerate ray tracing performance in video games. So with the PS4 generation, when we got the PS4 Pro, they were pushing stuff like higher frame rates and 4K resolution. It seems like that the gimmick this generation is going to be ray tracing, because if you've used ray tracing on any game on the PS5, you know that it immediately tanks your frame rate down to 30. It's like the quality mode in any game. And a lot of the games that use ray tracing and have a quality mode, they still have dynamic resolution and they still struggle to hold 30 FPS. So to have them improve ray tracing and maybe be able to get to 60 on some games, maybe at lower resolutions, would be awesome, because over on the PC side, we've had ray tracing forever. On my PC, I've had ray tracing for like 3 laptops in a row now, but you never use it in games because they say games support it, but like even if you have a 4090, you're barely able to get any game to run at close to 60 FPS with ray tracing on at any resolution, even with DLSS on. There are some games definitely where it works, but like generally speaking, it's extremely hard to use ray tracing. But as we've seen over on the PS5, when you're only working with one piece of hardware, you can still make games look pretty good and still have ray tracing and then hold a pretty solid 30 FPS. So it makes sense that Sony would be able to maybe figure out some workaround, some way to get the PS5 Pro to use ray tracing in an effective manner at a higher frame rate. Honestly, I'm not too sure how to feel on this. I was pretty excited for a generation where we didn't have a Pro model just because I feel like the PS5 is so good, but I'm always happy to get new Sony hardware because when they put out new hardware, whether people adopt it or not, there's usually a good reason for it, and the hardware actually usually is pretty impressive. Like even though people didn't buy the Vita, that's still my favorite handheld of all time. I play it frequently still, even though I have the Steam Deck. So I would be really curious to see what they could really do with the PS5 Pro. I'd also be curious to see if it would be smaller, because if you look at the PS4 Pro, it's a lot bigger than the PS4 Slim that came out alongside of it. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here really. We're just going to have to wait and see when Sony announces this, because if it's coming in 2024, they'll probably announce it or at least tease it alongside this PS5 Slim, which everyone is expecting to come out this year. So everyone's saying, oh, during the showcase in June would be a great time to announce this new hardware. I don't know if they'd announce the Pro at that time, but yeah, I will definitely pick one of these up. I think it does suck that the first 2 years of this generation were basically PS4 games that were upscaled and made to run at higher frame rates, but we're seeing more and more games on the regular PS5 be 30 FPS. So if I can kind of skip that by getting a PS5 Pro and have every game still be 60 FPS, I'm definitely doing that. I cannot go back to 30 FPS.